insulation between the walls of their home, like they had originally thought. Now remember, they had the inspection of the home, and I honestly believe that in order to sell a home as, an inhabitable space, it has to have an inspection and pass on the inspection. And this house passed on the inspection. So what the Prezzius family found in their walls was just so shocking to them. Upon further investigation, the Prezzius family found that what lined the walls of their home was not insulation, but it was the carcasses of a bunch of different dead animals. These animals ranged from chickens to birds to other animals. Now, these animals had not just crawled up into the walls and died. At our current house here, we have had an issue where a bird had gotten into the roof, and apparently this had happened in the past as well, because So, powwowing, or Braucherei, as the Pennsylvania Dutch called it, is a term used surrounding some healing rituals or folk magic that the Pennsylvania Dutch practiced. It reminded others in the area of some Native American rituals, and so that is where the term powwowing came from. Now, these rituals that the Pennsylvania Dutch practiced stemmed from their faith, along with just everyday items that they felt helped protect them from sickness or from harm. Something to think about is, of course, back in the day, medicine was definitely not as advanced as it is today. So I believe that is kind of where some of these rituals came into play, was they didn't really have answers for things. So these rituals, of course, like I said, kind of stemmed from their faith and helped to keep them safe. So an example of a common powwow that the Pennsylvania Dutch, and a lot of them believed in this one, was that if someone had a wart on their hands or anywhere on their feet, you could have someone cut a potato in half, and then you would go outside and put the potato on wherever the wart was located, and then the person who was holding the potato on you would say several prayers, and that this had to be done under a waxing moon specifically. Yeah, so of course, these are really things that the majority of the population believe in today, but back then this was really what they believed worked. Also, during this time period, burns were treated by blowing 3 times on a burn and saying various prayers between the blowing on the burns as well. Now, the expert that the Prezzius family consulted claimed that the animals and the objects stuffed between the walls of the Prezzius family home most likely came from a powwow practice that happened in the home. Now, while the powwowing practice really only occurred in southeastern Pennsylvania, some people in the area that were of non Nelson had a copy of the book, The Long Lost Friend, that covered the dark magic of the powwow rituals, and he would often take part in powwow rituals to help heal himself or friends that he knew. So John, who believed he was cursed, began to speak to a local witch doctor named Nellie Knoll, who was known in the area as the River Witch of Marietta. Nellie told John that she believed that Nelson had cursed him as well, and that is why he was not getting any better from his ailments. So Nellie told John that in order to reverse the curse, he would need to break into Nelson's home and steal his book, The Long Lost Friend, about powwows, and that he would need to burn it along with burying a lock of Nelson's hair in the ground. I find it a little humorous to think nowadays that while John thought he was being cursed by someone else, he felt fully comfortable to go to another person who was called a witch doctor. I just think that's so crazy to think about nowadays, that thought process and how that worked. But, this was many years ago, and this is truly what John believed was happening. So Nellie had told John that if this book was the source of Nelson's spells, that he would feel better if he burned the book. So John agreed and broke into Nelson's house with two young men. One of those men was John Curry, who was 14 years old, and another was named Wilbert Hess, and he was 18 years old. After breaking into Nelson's home, the trio was surprised to find Nelson there, as they thought he was not going to be home at that time. John and the boys grew frustrated as they were unable to find the powwow book rather quickly, and Nelson had startled them, so they ended up murdering Nelson, tying him to a chair and setting him on fire, because John believed that this would work and the curse would be lifted off of him if he did this. So rumor has it that even though Nelson's body was doused in kerosene, he, did not burn completely. The story at the time was that the hounds of hell were going to return to collect Nelson's remains, and that is why he did not burn completely at that point in time. So today, the house is known as the Hex House and is owned by Nelson's great-grandson, and you can go on a tour of the home if you want. So I find this so crazy how this story kind of ties into the story of the Prezzius family. How they found something so odd and crazy in their walls, and it turned out to be Braucherei or powwowing happening. But in turn, those caused some issues back in the day, as people truly believed it was dark magic. Now, while the Prezzius family does not have any specific answers as to why or how this really did happen in their home, they at least have an interesting story to tell, and they have an explanation for kind of the why. I just wish we could figure out specific